There are moments in life when we suddenly realize that the boundary between humans and nature is more fragile than we once thought. On a cold winter night in the wilderness, where the snow and ice covered everything, and the wind howled like the size of the earth and sky, a wild creature did something that no one had ever witnessed before. It was not afraid, not aggressive, but instead, it chose to trust humans. An extraordinary choice, a decision that could change the fate of all those present. At a heavily guarded military base, among people who were used to dealing with threats from invading aircraft, natural disasters, or tense conflicts, they could not have expected that that night the greatest challenge would come from something completely different. A desperate look, an action beyond all natural laws, and a silent message that no one could ignore. They were faced with a decision to adhere to strict discipline or to break the boundaries to listen to something greater. Little did they know that what would happen in the next 72 hours would become an incredible story, challenging all beliefs and awakening the deepest things in each person's heart. So what happened? What moved the most resilient people to tears? And what completely changed the way they looked at this world? Where did you find this story? Did a friend share it? Or did you stumble upon it in the endless flow of life? Subscribe now, because tomorrow a special story awaits you. A story that can change the way you look at compassion and believe in miracles. In the middle of a cold winter night, when the Colorado mountains were covered with sparkling stars, Echo Station 7, a secret military base always heavily guarded, was suddenly shaken by an unprecedented event. Captain Jake Sullivan and his patrol were shocked when the alarm bell rang loudly. A large, powerful figure, a giant gray wolf, rushed through the high-voltage security fence without stopping. But what stunned everyone was not the bold intrusion, but the strange action that followed. Instead of growling or attacking, the wolf slowly walked in front of the command area, its heavy legs bent, its golden eyes shining with pain and despair. It bowed its head deeply, in a respectful, submissive posture, as if sending a soundless plea to humans. No one dared to breathe loudly. The soldiers, who had faced war, natural disasters, and countless other extreme situations, were now helpless before this scene. They could feel the urgency in the animal's every gasp, a feeling that transcended all boundaries between man and beast. Sergeant Emily Carter, the base's wildlife specialist, whispered, "This can't be." Bears, panthers, and even mountain lions had prowled the base in search of food, but never had an animal behaved like this. The wolf's deep eyes seemed to tell a story of pain that no words could express. It had not come here to fight, but to seek help, which sent shivers down their spines. Sullivan slowly lowered his gun, his heart pounding. His military instincts told him to follow protocol, but his heart whispered otherwise. Is this a gesture of awakening, of faith and kindness, even from a wild creature? Is nature trying to tell humans something they have never noticed? The whole base fell into a heavy silence. What would they do? Chase the wolf away as a threat, or listen to the wordless plea of a desperate creature? And what about you? What would you choose if you were faced with such a moment where the line between instinct and compassion was blurred? This is the moment when kindness and understanding are weighed. And perhaps one decision will change everything. In the thick darkness of the Colorado jungle, the snow-covered trees seemed to hold the secrets of the wilderness. As Sullivan and his team reviewed the security camera footage, a chilling truth began to emerge. The wolf was no reckless intruder. It had been standing there for hours, silently, patiently observing every movement of the base. It was not just a wild animal, but a desperate mother, searching for a glimmer of hope in this strange world. But what had driven it to break through its natural fear and seek out humans? Carter, with years of experience working with wild animals, quickly realized something was wrong. "She's a mother wolf," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "And I think she's left her pups somewhere." The words filled the air, a heavy silence filling the command room. No one spoke, but everyone understood. If the mother wolf had left her cubs to seek help, they could be in dire danger. Sullivan didn't have to think long. He knew it was a decision that went against all military protocol, but it was also a decision that couldn't be ignored. "We'll follow her," he said firmly. A small team was assembled immediately. Carter, along with 3 of the most experienced soldiers, carrying high-powered flashlights, medical equipment, and defensive weapons. They didn't know what awaited them in the deep woods, but they all had the same feeling. They were embarking on an unprecedented mission where the boundary between man and nature was thinner than ever. When the massive iron gates of the base opened, the mother wolf immediately stood up. She didn't run away like a frightened wild animal, but quietly took a few steps back, her eyes still watching them sharply, as if it understood that the humans had accepted its plea. Its footsteps were light, almost gliding across the snow, leading into the silent night. The rescue team followed closely behind each footprint in the snow, their breaths billowing white smoke in the biting cold air. The silence of the night forest was broken only by the crunch of snow underfoot and the wind whistling through the dry branches. Carter thought to himself, "Nature has a strange way of testing the kindness of humans, and tonight was one of those tests." As they walked deeper into the forest, the mother wolf's tracks became clearer. Sharp claw marks on tree trunks and repeated footprints around some bushes showed that she had hesitated for a long time before deciding to go to the base. This only confirmed her desperation, a maternal instinct that overcame any innate fear. Sullivan felt something slowly changing inside her. This was more than a rescue mission. It was a profound lesson in trust. For the first time in his military career, he felt something no tactical procedure could teach him: understanding between seemingly disparate creatures. Have you ever looked into the eyes of a wild creature and felt that something bigger was going on? Time was running out for them. The temperature was dropping rapidly, the cold seeping into every muscle. Carter occasionally bent down to check the footprints, noticing that they were becoming more and more disjointed and disjointed. A sign that the mother wolf was exhausted. Sullivan signaled the team to speed up, knowing that if they didn't find the pup soon, they might not be able to fight. Suddenly, the mother wolf stopped abruptly. She stood in the middle of the clearing, breathing heavily, her eyes shining with urgency. It turned its head to look at them, then took a few steps forward, then turned back, as if to confirm that they were still following. Carter placed a gentle hand on Sullivan's shoulder and whispered, "It's leading us somewhere important." They continued, following the wolf's lead, though they were all feeling a sense of anxiety. The landscape around them became more desolate, the trees bare and the snow thicker than ever. The last steps brought them to a cliff, where the footprints ended just before the mouth of a deep ravine. Sullivan shone his flashlight down, and what he saw left him speechless. Two small, frightened, weak eyes stared up at them from the bottom of the crevasse. The two cubs, trapped in the cold darkness, shivered in the cold. The mother stood on the edge of the crevasse, emitting soft whimpers as if to comfort her cubs. A question arose in Sullivan's mind. If it were you, would you trust in the goodness of humans as this mother wolf did? The real fight for survival began here. The rescue team couldn't turn back. They had to act immediately. And for the first time in his life, Sullivan felt that sometimes the most important decisions come not from the head, but from the heart. A cold wind blew through the jungle, carrying with it the dark murmur of the wilderness. Sullivan's steps faltered as the flashlight beam entered the mouth of an ice-covered cave, where the mother wolf stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the cold darkness below. Her ears twitched slightly, each heavy breath coming out in a thin white mist. She had led them here, to the place where the two little creatures were trapped in the relentless cold of the Colorado mountains. Carter moved closer, her eyes briefly filled with worry as she saw the wolf pups' footprints leading to the edge of a small cliff, then suddenly disappearing. "They're down there," she whispered, her voice hoarse with cold. All eyes turned to the narrow crevice in the cave, where the flashlight beam shone down to reveal two pairs of round, tired, almost desperate eyes. The two pups, huddled and shivering, were trapped between the ice that had fallen from the ceiling. The mother wolf let out a low, pitiful whimper, and Sullivan's heart sank. A part of him, trained to face obvious dangers, was moved by an inexplicable emotion, compassion. How could a wild creature, instinctively feral and fearful, trust a human to this extent? And would he, if he were in its shoes, do the same? "We need to act now," Sullivan ordered firmly. With the terrain treacherous and the ice threatening to collapse at any moment, the rescue team quickly put their plan into action. Carter checked the depth of the crevice, estimating it to be about 15 feet. Not too deep, but dangerous enough. The sharp ice hanging overhead was a major threat, and any false move could trigger a catastrophic collapse. They set up a sturdy rope system, secured to a nearby tree, ensuring enough force to pull both person and pup up safely. Sullivan and Carter briefly discussed their approach. Carter eventually volunteered to go down first. Her hands had been in contact with wild animals for years, and she believed she could ease the pup's fears. As Carter slowly slid down through the icy crevice, the space around her became eerily quiet. Her breathing echoed in the darkness, along with the cub's teeth chattering from the cold. They huddled close together, their eyes filled with fear, but seemingly too weak to run. Carter gently knelt down, opened the thermal bag she had brought with her, and tried to give the first bit of warmth to the little creatures on the brink of death. Looking at the pups, she felt a strange connection. Like humans, life always seeks hope, even when it is slowly extinguished by the harshest of circumstances. "I'll get you out of here," she whispered, her voice strangely reassuring. Have you ever stood before a vulnerable life and realized that everything depended on your decision? At the mouth of the cave, Sullivan and the soldiers watched Carter's every move. Suddenly, a cracking sound rang out, and a small piece of ice fell, sending the team into a panic. "Hurry, Carter, we don't have much time," Sullivan warned over the radio. Carter carefully wrapped the wolves in thermal blankets and signaled them to pull. The rope gradually tightened, inch by inch, pulling the small creatures up from the deep hole. The mother wolf above nervously moved closer, never taking her eyes off her cubs. Her patience and trust amazed the team, in this life or death moment, she had chosen to trust the humans. The first wolf was successfully pulled up. Sullivan quickly carried it away, placed it in a safe place, and checked its vital signs. Its heart was beating weakly, but there was still a chance. The mother wolf rushed forward and bent down to lick her child, a sigh of relief echoing through the quiet jungle. But the danger was not over yet. The remaining wolf cub was still trapped below, and time was not on their side. Carter had to return to the cave once more. The air was becoming more and more stifling, and the cracking sound of the ice was becoming clearer. "Stay calm. We'll get her out soon," Carter told himself, persistently approaching the remaining weak wolf cub. But this time, its body was almost motionless, and its breathing was getting weaker. A quick decision was made. Carter picked it up, hugged it tightly, transmitted his body warmth, and signaled to pull it up. This pull was faster and stronger. All the soldiers joined forces, feeling the urgency of the situation. And then, the moment they had been waiting for finally arrived. Carter and the last wolf cub were brought up safely. There was a loud crack from below as a large chunk of ice collapsed, but everyone was safe. The mother wolf moved closer shakily, her nose touching each of her cubs, examining them carefully. She turned to look at Carter, Sullivan, and the rest of the team, her eyes flashing with something beyond instinct, gratitude. The group stood there, silent before the indescribable moment. Nature, though harsh, still contains miracles. In a world full of conflicts and doubts, sometimes trust and kindness are the only things that can erase all boundaries. Do you believe that, between humans and nature, there is always an invisible bond? And if faced with a moment like this, would you have the courage to act? That night, when the rescue team returned to the base, the snow was still falling heavily, but in each person's heart, a warm fire was lit. Under the silent night sky, in the cold of the Colorado mountains, 2 wolf pups shivered in the arms of the rescue team. Their weak breathing gradually stabilized as they were wrapped in thermal blankets, each drop of warm water falling on their dry lips, carrying a glimmer of hope. The mother wolf, after many hours of anxious waiting, stepped forward gently, her deep brown eyes filled with love and gratitude. She bent down, gently touching each of her cubs with her warm nose, as if to confirm that they were truly safe. The entire rescue team stood still, no one daring to interrupt that sacred moment. The wolf's eyes, when looking up at Sullivan, contained something beyond instinct. It was gratitude, an invisible connection between 2 seemingly opposite worlds. We always think of ourselves as the rulers, but in that moment, they realized that sometimes humans are just a small part of the vast picture of nature. And in choosing compassion over fear, something miraculous happened. Carter stood beside Sullivan, her eyes glinting in the flickering flashlight beam. "Can you believe it?" she whispered. Sullivan didn't answer, just nodded silently. He had seen his fair share of fierce confrontations in his military career, but never had he experienced such a profound feeling as this one. Absolute trust from a wild creature. A few minutes later, the mother wolf quietly turned her head and glanced at Sullivan one more time. Not urgently, not in panic, but as a meaningful farewell. Then, with light steps, she led her 2 cubs back toward the jungle, gradually disappearing into the night. The team stood there, watching her retreating figure, their hearts heavy but strangely relieved. They knew that, tonight, they had done the right thing. This event completely changed the way Echo Station 7 viewed nature. Patrols were no longer just surveillance missions, but journeys of listening and understanding the land they were protecting. The base then adopted new wildlife protection measures, establishing warning zones to avoid unnecessary conflicts, and organizing special training sessions on how to deal with animals in emergencies. And it didn't stop there. The story of the mother wolf and the courage of the rescue team went viral, inspiring other units across the country to respect the natural world. Nature is not an enemy. It is only looking for understanding from humans. And it started with a moment of compassion. Have you ever wondered how many creatures are out there waiting for help that they can't put into words? And if one day you were faced with a situation like Sullivan's, where reason and compassion intersected, what would you choose? That night, as the rescue team returned to base, they were filled not only with the joy of a successful mission, but also with the realization that sometimes the smallest decisions can change the world. The story of the mother wolf and the rescue team at Echo Station 7 is not only a dramatic rescue journey between humans and nature, but also a profound reminder of trust, understanding, and love that transcends all boundaries. Sometimes, in the most desperate moments, the only thing we can do is open our hearts, listen to what cannot be said, and believe in the magical connection between all species. From the mother wolf's desperate eyes to Sullivan's bold decision and the rescue team's patience, all prove that no matter how different, every creature on this planet has one thing in common: the desire to live, to be loved, and to be protected. We, humans, are sometimes so caught up in the worries of life that we forget that nature is always there, observing, waiting, and hoping for our kindness. If this story touches your heart, take a moment to think: how many creatures out there need a helping hand, a sympathetic eye, or even just a look of understanding? What would you do when faced with a decisive moment, when someone's life, be it human or animal, is in your hands? Like if you feel this story deserves to be spread. Don't forget to share, to send this meaningful message to more people. Because who knows, you might be the one to inspire someone to act more kindly towards the world around them. And leave a score for this story, from 0 to 10, according to your feelings. And if you're curious about more magical stories, where courage, perseverance, and faith create miracles in life, don't miss the next stories on the end screen. Click subscribe to be part of the journey to discover extraordinary things from the most ordinary things.